So welcome everybody to this first event in what will become a series of conversations about how we can become more resilient. It's a conversation that we hope to co-create with all of you as you stay involved with us and share with your friends and neighbors and families, and with our tremendous, inspiring and very practical guests that we'll be bringing to events during this series. So my name is Dorcas Robinson, and I'm going to be your moderator this evening. And I'm just going to start with a few housekeeping points. We are recording this event so that we can share it with people who can join us tonight and other people who would like to find out more later. It would be wonderful to see you on video. You won't appear in the recording because you don't have your audio on. And what we're asking you to do this evening is use the chat to tell us a bit more about where you're from and who you are. And also to put in your comments and questions as we go ahead this evening. So once more, welcome, and I will start the session. We just want to start with an acknowledgement from the speakers and myself that we are on the traditional territory of Susquehannock, Nanticoke, and Anacostan and Piscataway peoples. If you would like to find out more about the land that you are on, you can find out more on nativeland.ca or whose.land. I would like to start by just saying thank you to our various event co-sponsors, including the Fresh Food Factory, Pisco Sustainable Solutions. We also have support from Cedar Lane Ecosystem Study Group and Ridge to Reefs, Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, and the Climate Mobilization in Montgomery County. I'd also like to thank Louise Mitchell, who's our formidable inspirer and incredible energy maker and mover, who has reached out and found an amazing array of speakers to join us over the next few months. And also our zoomology team, led by Jim Lawrenson with Philip Bogdanoff and Carl Held, who are taking care of all the technology behind us. And finally, I'd like to give a big thank you to the team at DIY Green, who've done a lot of the background support. And I'd like to welcome Annabelle Park, the founder and director of DIY Green, to say a few words. Annabelle, would you like to say hello? Could Annabelle be unmuted, please, Jim?
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Annabelle.
Hi, Annabelle.
Hi. I am in Pittsburgh, and I am working with Louise, Margie Roswell, who's also here, and a really good, talented group of designers and content creators. And we're DIY Green. You can go to DIYgreen.org. And what we're trying to do is create media, especially focused on social media platforms, creating media around joining together to create a movement and to learn how we can become more resilient to climate change and how we can learn about best sustainability practices together and actually live them and try to be very practical about how we approach climate change so that we're not just living in fear or working towards giant legislation, but to change the way we live and organize our community around existing best practices and finding new ways to become even more sustainable. And we're going to be partnering up with Ridge to Reefs, an organization that Margie and Louise are also involved in. And we're actually going to create a campus in West Virginia, Lost River, West Virginia, so that we can create media there and invite people to come and do trainings in person. So we're going to take this kind of to a new level. So we're going beyond social media and convening meetings there. And hopefully we're going to ramp up really in, I would say, mid-July. So yeah, so bear with us while we ramp up, but you can join us now on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel now that I just created today. We do have a Twitter account, Instagram, and there's a platform called Hilo. If you go to hilo.com, you'll see that there's a whole network of people, social network of people like us, looking for solutions to climate change and sustainability and co-living. So hylo.com. And actually I did create a group there. Haven't posted anything yet, but I think you're going to be really impressed with the people there and what's possible on this platform. So I hope to see you guys on Hilo and Facebook or Twitter. I might even venture into Clubhouse. I'm going to think about it. But thanks for joining, and congrats to all the organizers of this webinar. This is fantastic.
Thank you, Annabelle, and thanks for the work of DIY Green. Thanks for that. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers tonight. We have Joan Plisko and Mark Plisko and Amanda Stevenson. So Joan is the president and founder of Plisko Sustainable Solutions, where she consults as an environmental health and sustainability director, strategic planner, researcher, and educator. She has a great love of the natural world, and she loves camping, hiking, and traveling. And as a community leader, Joan volunteers in local and non-profit boards and mentors young and emerging professionals in the sustainability field. So welcome to Joan, great to have you. And we have Mark Plisko, who is the vice president of Plisko Sustainable Solutions, where he consults as an experienced industrial hygienist, fulfilling his passion for protecting people in their work environment from hazardous chemicals and environmental waste. Thank you for that, Mark. And he also loves camping, hiking, and traveling, and gives back to the community by providing pro bono services to a religious school and a large educational organic farm and retreat center. And then we have Amanda Stevenson, who's joining us, who is the owner of the Fresh Food Factory Market in Southeast Washington, D.C.'s Ward 8, and the president of the nonprofit Unify, which stands for United Nation of Individuals Fighting Impossibilities. I love it. And Amanda and her family engage residents of Ward 8 in eating healthier, growing and preparing their own food and personal care products, creating food and nutrition training, and providing business assistance. Additionally, Amanda is working closely with her sisters and brothers to reclaim their family farm and continue their father's legacy and provide their family and friends with experiences in rural farming. Now, before I hand over to Joan and Mark to talk to us first, I just wanted to make a few comments about embarking on the resilience journey and what it takes. So I have a couple of observations, and one of them, which I think it's just really important to acknowledge, is that for many of us, climate and what you might call eco-anxiety is increasingly showing up in our lives. And I just wanted to note this because if people are finding that they are becoming depressed or anxious about climate change, it's important to note that many mental health professionals are kind of ready and hearing more about this and ready to support people through therapy to sort of talk about that more. The second thing I just wanted to highlight is that for millions of us who may be becoming more anxious about climate change, there are also millions of people around the US and around the world who are already living with the negative impacts of climate change. And I just want to acknowledge that millions of people, for them, this is their lived reality today, and really invite us to humbly connect with and learn from communities that are living on the front lines of the climate crisis. So I'm just going to share my screen, which, there we go, it is working now. I was having some problems with. I just wanted to talk briefly about how I think about resilience and how resilience shows up in our lives. There are a lot of definitions out there for resilience, but I think one that really works well is the ability to cope with whatever life throws at you, which is a good sort of coming from the world of psychology. In the non-profit international work that I am involved in around disaster risk management and climate change adaptation, we think about the ability of a community to adapt to living with uncertainty and a range of strategies around preparing for disasters and recovering from them, but also adapting to how changing weather patterns are affecting crops, for example. Many of the communities around the world that I work with depend on their own small farm. And from an ecological perspective, ecologists think about how ecosystems respond to a shock, like, I mean, you know, leaching from farms, for example, that affect the water quality, and how that ecosystem can adapt to and recover from the damage that's caused. So those are just some ideas about what resilience looks like. But then how do you know, kind of bring that down to something a bit more practical? I mean, in the resilience world that I work in, people often talk about sources of resilience. So the skills and the knowledge and the assets and the local services that help to kind of help to build resilience in terms of having an availability of a service, or having basic skills, like, do you have people in your community who can do first aid, for example, who can be on the front line when something happens? Do you have a good social network where people can help each other out when somebody is challenged, or when there's an event in the community, like a flood event, for example? You know, when you're thinking about these sources of resilience, often, you know, at local level or higher levels, you'll have plans in place and institutions responsible, like FEMA, for example, in the US, whose job it is to think about what kind of shocks do we need to prepare for, how can we strengthen those sources of resilience, and how can we help those sources of resilience work together better moving forward. And so oftentimes when people think about resilience, they also think about the principles of resilient systems. So things like, do you have a lot of diversity in your system? I mean, we saw this last year, you know, with shortages in a lot of stores, as people were panic buying when we kind of went into lockdown around COVID-19. You know, is there some diversity in the system? Could you get your food from different places? And you know, a lot of people started backyard gardening, I think, last year because of that. Other principles of resilience are things like, is the system flexible? Can it adapt to change? Is it robust in terms of how we respond to shocks and stresses? So, you know, those are just some things to think about in terms of unpacking what resilience means in practice. And then, you know, I think about this as a journey, and it's very personal for each of us. So when I think of a journey, I kind of think of the world of personal development. So I think, well, okay, you set an intention, you set some goals for yourself, you make a plan, you take some actions towards your goals and your plan. And in the process, you make more connections between yourself and other people and other issues. So the way that this has played out in my life, for example, my big intent a few years ago was to go zero waste. And one of my primary actions, my first action, was how to reduce food waste from going into the trash. So I began to invite neighbors to compost with me. And, you know, that's been tremendous. Over the last 2 years, I've got 15 families who now compost with me. I've built better and deeper friendships with people. I've seen the connection with conservation. I can talk to people about how I'm helping them reduce their emissions that would otherwise come from their food waste going into the trash. And we were talking more about the connections between, you know, here are food scraps and leaves, here's soil, here's food and flowers. So, you know, it's all about making those connections between things and the cycle of life effectively. And just finally, a couple of other things that I've been amazed by in the last couple of years is how many entrepreneurs and platforms are coming up to help us do these things. So I'm a soil maker with Make Soil, for example. So you can find my soil site on Make Soil and you can sign up to join it. I buy food through a platform that was started in Maryland, Hungry Harvest, but is now up and down the East Coast, where you can buy a food box every week, which is food that otherwise would have gone from wholesalers straight into the trash. I'm a member of my local Buy Nothing group, which is managed through Facebook. And through that group, I can exchange gifts of time, of expertise, as well as, you know, things that other people are looking for, like, hey, I need a shovel this weekend for a project I'm doing. Can someone lend that to me? So there's a lot going on out there that we can all connect to. And I just wanted to share those ideas with everybody. So I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to invite Joan and Mark to tell us more about themselves. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dorcas. Mark, are you ready? I'm ready.
All right. We're going to go through a lot of stuff pretty quickly.
Thank you, Dorcas, for the kind introduction, and welcome everyone. Joan and I are pleased to share with you our journey to become more resilient during the past 20 years that we've spent together. We have and continue to learn valuable lessons each step of the way and welcome your connection to us. So please do reach out if you have questions following this conversation. We will also be providing our contact information for you. Resilience includes technology resilience, energy resilience, and terror event resilience, and each has elements in common with climate change resilience. With Y2K, we all questioned whether the power grid or other technology would fail, and as new parents, we needed to be prepared. We needed to ensure we could recover quickly in the event of power failure or other Y2K related event, and we had in effect created our own resilience plan. We stocked plenty of water and firewood for the months ahead. Vulnerability of our energy infrastructure to equipment failure caused by weather and natural disasters is becoming more frequent. After Y2K, we maintained our resilience plan, and in 2012, after the infamous North American derecho, we were without power for 5 days. We learned that resilience is not just about having the resources to persevere, but it's also about the contingency plans you have in place for effectively using your resources. Terror events may also lead to technology failures or the need for populations to quickly evacuate in the event of emergency. Those impacted may need to leave their homes for various periods lasting from days to months. Some may never return. Many people had to flee New York City and relocate on or after 9/11, similar to climate refugees having to temporarily or permanently flee their homes due to severe weather events or sea level rise. Resilience entails the resources and the plans to overcome. In the event we had to evacuate our home, what would we take with us and how would we muster the family together? We created a family communication plan and packed a ready-to-go bug-out bag. We can apply this thinking to the future as we face more catastrophic climate events, and in a world with sea level rise, drought, and extreme weather events, the world is seeing more climate refugees who are forced to leave their homes.
Thanks, Mark, for that framing. My personal and professional passion around environmental health and sustainability has been evolving since the early 1990s, and we launched Plisco Sustainable Solutions over 6 years ago. It's my full-time work, and Mark plays an essential supporting role in the company and works professionally as a certified industrial hygienist. For me, my personal and professional boundaries are blurry. At this point, I want to invite you to type into the chat box, why is it good to grow your own food? For us, gardening is our primary active interest, and it provides us with local, nutrient-dense, chemical-free, hyper-local food. It's also something that binds Mark and I together. We love to get dirty, and it reduces stress, as Dorcas mentioned. We attract pollinators, and we provide habitat for many of our planet's critters. We've been stewarding our yard for over 20 years. Our yard is less than a quarter acre. It's quite productive. So you don't need a lot of space to grow some fruit and vegetables. To bolster our growing, I recently completed a 100-hour permaculture design class. So we like to incorporate companion planting, shown on the right. There's shallots in with the lettuce, and reclaimed materials, the bathtub and the pallet for the peas. This was just taken this week. We enjoy variety, and we're always exploring and trying new things out. Fruit trees are a growing interest. We have figs and quince and bush cherry, and we're considering nut trees such as hickory and chestnut. Our journey forward will include a DIY greenhouse, which we need to learn to do, or some covering for our raised bed. Our hope is to extend our growing and harvesting through all of the seasons. We recently began harvesting daylilies, shown on the left. I actually didn't know that they were edible until I took the permaculture class, and they do taste a bit like asparagus, so I invite you all to try them. And making a smudge stick out of sage and rosemary and other herbs for our home and our neighbors fills my cup and supports emotional resilience. Plus, I love the smell of burning sage. It's cleansing for me. Again, that emotional piece is so very important. Energy, food, and emotional resilience are all necessary to bounce back from a disruption, whether it be climate, techno, or terror. And as we've been learning more skills to help strengthen our connection to Earth, we also harvest and preserve to have garden produce through the winter months. Each year we grow and dehydrate tomatoes for ourselves and for gifting. Freezing and pickling vegetables and herbs, as well as making pesto, has become integral to our gardening practices. Additionally, we like to dry items such as peppers and herbs, including basil, mint, lemon balm, and lovage, to make tea and grill seasonings for my husband, Mark, the master griller. And for me, the giving economy is priceless. I recently gifted my neighbor seeds and helped her with advice and plant her first spring garden ever. So teaching and sharing gardening ideas is a great way for us to connect to our neighbors. We also like to grow big, beautiful flowers as part of tending the earth. And although we predominantly plant perennials, which attract pollinators, every year we plant zinnias to attract butterflies too. And we're in tune with how water flows on our property, especially in extreme weather events, as we live at the bottom of the hill in an old creek bed. On one side of our house, we've planted a rain garden to help slow down the stormwater flow in that space and really let it soak in. I adore children, and I teach and engage the kids in the neighborhood about gardening. During COVID, I hosted the young people on the bottom left for weekly sessions. Here we're making tea together. On the right, near our driveway, after a dead tree came down, we created an urban veggie patch, which we now invite our neighbors to pick their own free lemon balm, oregano, thyme, green beans. Picking herbs is simple and satisfying for the kids and always gets smiles all around.
Connecting to our neighbors also includes supporting local farmers and growers. For more than a decade, we've organized a neighborhood egg delivery group where at least 30 dozen locally raised farm eggs are delivered to our house for subscribed neighbors and friends. Over the years, we've become closer with our community neighbors and supported the local economy. We believe part of community resilience is knowing your neighbors and who may require assistance in times of severe storms or power outages. Energy resilience is about ensuring a home has a reliable, regular supply of energy and contingency measures in place in the event of a power failure. Following 9/11 and a few severe storms, we invested in a portable generator. This generator provides enough backup power to run our furnace, refrigerator, freezer, and a few lights. Taking the term energy resilience one step further, the term resilient power refers to a home-based electricity generation and storage solution for use during climate-induced power outages. We've also mastered the art of outdoor cuisine. We have a portable propane barbecue and extra propane on hand that we use year-round or during weather and power emergencies. We can cook full meals that include fresh vegetables, fish and seafood, the winter blizzard rotisserie chicken, or even dessert. The barbecue has helped make our life flexible to power grid issues, including storms, snow, and blizzards. How's that for apocalypse chow? In the case of power outages, we can also use portable solar panels along with an electrical inverter to charge a storage battery or power small electronic devices, including cell phones, laptop computers, medical devices, or GPS units. And I really want to emphasize the word storage here, because installing solar panels is a great way to ensure you won't lose power, but only if you also have a battery installed to store the energy that's produced by your solar panels. Whether for pleasure or climate emergency, we're also resilient on the road in our small camper, complete with all the comforts of home. We've traveled in our camper to many states, and under extreme circumstances, we could also live in it if we wanted to, and survive off the grid with our solar panels and deep cycle battery. We really like our portable solar panels and enjoy the free, sustainable electricity benefit. Another way to support community resilience and the renewable energy economy is through community solar. Joan?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. We enroll in a community solar program where we purchase renewable energy without having panels on our roof, and it's less expensive than conventional energy. We basically have bought a subscription to a solar field. This particular project is through Pearlstone, which is an organic farm retreat and education center in Baltimore County, about 30 minutes from Baltimore City. Now, Pearlstone is 180 acres and is one of my clients. I'm in my 5th year as the community sustainability director there. I helped get solar panels installed, got a grant for electric vehicle charging stations, facilitated a Fitwel certification, and together we have a vision for a solar pasture where sheep can graze beneath the panels. As a professional, I'm helping to build resilience into the organization and into the community. Last spring, when COVID hit and we were all staying at home, my 18-year-old daughter helped me create home gardening videos, which I invite you to watch. The URL is below. And this was a way for Pearlstone to connect with their community. Topics included seeds and seedlings, fruit trees. Mark and I created a DIY trellis, plant guilds, companion planting, and more. Simple ways to grow and enjoy the bounties of nature. I had also planned a weekend resilience workshop for Pearlstone, which was scheduled to occur last November. Unfortunately, we had to postpone it due to COVID. So in the meantime, I'm now developing an immersive series of eco workshops to help people connect to planet. Topics might include taking a creek walk and talking about stream restoration, making candles and talking about solar energy, tree bathing with hands-on tree identification. We intend to roll this out in August, so if you're interested, this is something I would encourage you to please connect with me about. Another client is MedStar Harbor Hospital in the Cherry Hill neighborhood of Baltimore. And for close to 6 years, I've helped to develop and implement a green infrastructure master plan in which we planted 48,000 plants and trees in the form of bioswales and healing gardens at a hospital in Baltimore. That's right, at a hospital in Baltimore, that many plants and trees. Now, MedStar Harbor Hospital literally sits on the bank of the Patapsco River. And in this picture, you can barely see it to the far right. Part of the stormwater project included a healing garden just out of the back of the hospital, where the associates typically sit to enjoy breaks and meals. And now they have this vision of loveliness to gaze at. Along the river is a trail that is accessible to the public. So overall, this is a fantastic place to connect with nature and breathe, slowing down. The overall project treats 5 acres of property and approximately 5 million gallons of stormwater each year. I especially love how the new bioswales are planted near some of the more mature tree canopy on the campus. We're transforming the campus, and it's a beautiful property covered with native perennials, welcoming benches, and educational signage. I encourage you to contact me for a tour of the hospital grounds in Baltimore. None of this work at MedStar Hospital would have been possible without Brian Gray, pictured on the left. He is the sustainability dynamo at MedStar Harbor Hospital. And another thumbs up to Bryant Smith, the ED, the Executive Director of the Baltimore Tree Trust. I'm on the board of the Baltimore Tree Trust, and I brought these two organizations together. And we've been increasing the tree canopy on the campus to the tune of at least 125 trees over the past years alone. I believe that access to nature is a basic human right. Trees literally provide the oxygen we all need to survive and thrive. We're currently working towards an urban forest on hospital property anchored by this magnificent oak tree. We're actively seeking community input, and a landscape architect is designing a plan for installation this fall. I am honored to be part of a program that brings more trees to this community. I know in the past 15 minutes, we've given you a lot of information about our lives. Mark is a scientist, I'm an engineer, and we're interested to know how, when, and where, what is your next step on your resilience journey? We have a DIY greenhouse to build. We want to plant more fruit trees, upgrade our solar capacity, and explore off-grid living. How about you? Type it in the chat box. What's on your horizon? Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Joan. Wow, that's tremendous. You know, I've been thinking about that too. I mean, just one of the things that's been on my mind for a while is I actually do have solar panels on my roof, which I own. And I've been thinking, you know, there's people like me who maybe in the neighborhood should step up and get batteries because, you know, if things go down and there are people who have, you know, medical equipment that needs charging or whatever, you can be that hub in your community that people know they can go to for that energy. Wow, I love your story. That's incredible. So we're just gonna do a bit of an energizer, but I'm gonna encourage people, do share your thoughts in the chat. And if you have questions for Joan and Mark, we'll take them at the end after we've heard from Amanda. So also post those in the chat as we go. While Amanda's kind of getting ready to share her amazing story with us, how about you just put your arms up in the air, like, you know, stretch your back because you're probably all sitting on a chair. Yep, I like it, Joan. A bit of a wave. Take some deep breaths. And I think also, Louise, you're going to put up a poll for everybody. Maybe ask everyone a question. I think there'll be a poll coming up in your screen. If we're good to go with that, Louise. Yeah, so where do you get your food? You can answer more than one. Tell us where you get your food. I wish I got more out of my backyard garden, but I'm a terrible food farmer. I'm pretty good with native plants, but that's the extent of my skills. Yeah. Great. Wait for a few more people to tell us. Yeah, it's fun to see. Great, Louise. Do you want to, looks like everybody, oh yeah, a couple more people responding. Excellent. Great. Thank you, Louise. Do you want to close the poll and we can look at the results? Okay. So grocery store still is the highest profile, but there is quite a bit of diversity in here. We're seeing quite a lot of people who garden at home, 33%, some community gardening, fantastic. Supporting local farms and farmers markets is also important to people. It's good to see this. So I think a lot of us would be kind of having more than one source of where we get food. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Amanda, do you want to take it away? Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Amanda Stevenson, and everyone sees my slides?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So I came to Washington, D.C., I think back in 2003. I am from a small town. I grew up on a farm in Virginia, and that was my introduction, of course, to farming, but the whole resilient lifestyle. One I wanted to escape, one I thought I would never return to, but as life has it, it always preps you for what's coming. So I appreciate what I learned and what I've been able to use in my city life here in Washington, D.C. So when coming, the first thing that I've done was doing a lot of community work. I work for a nonprofit, but I saw a lot of gaps, and I started my own nonprofit venture, 501c3. It is entitled the United Nation of Individuals Fighting Impossibilities. And we wanted people to know that impossibilities are just perceived, and we do a lot of training and a lot of access. We provide people an opportunity so they could be empowered and they could just optimize their health, optimize what they're here to actually do. And that nonprofit, it birthed different for-profit entities like the Fresh Food Factory and the Fresh Food Factories Market, which is an ecosystem surrounding food, from growing food and know how to grow it, how to source it, to preparing, and also to the selling of that food. So we do a lot of that at the Fresh Food Factories Market. I'm also on the Mayor's Leadership Council for a cleaner Anacostia River in Washington, D.C. What we've done as it relates to developing a food system vision in Washington, D.C., we won Catholic University's grand prize for the vision as they were prepping to respond to Rockefeller Foundation's Food System Vision Challenge that they had in 2019. So we are doing a lot in the food space, and we're being recognized as such. Halcyon is a powerful nonprofit, and they work with a lot of different thought leaders and change agents in different communities nationally. And we are now in this cohort 2021, 22. So that is another accomplishment that we've had. We've been spotlighted in 2019 at the Chesapeake Bay Food Summit. We were spotlighted as an innovator for the things that we're doing as it relates to resiliency in the food system. I've worked with Sibley Memorial Hospital. I've been an innovator in residency with them to address health disparities. And at the top, it talks about, my commitment to the community to address health disparities as it relates to food, housing, and income gaps, income disparities. So I definitely believe all of this stemmed from my growing up on a farm in Virginia. And I share this picture of me in my youth when I was actually exposed. And that's me, who knew I would be doing what I'm doing and have a chance to meet all of you. So food equity and economic development is a part of who I am and what I do. And I was introduced to this whole idea. My father, he is the definition of resilience. He's a blind Black farmer in Virginia. I've come home from school to him telling stories about, a sale that he's made, to find out he was cheated out of his money. He couldn't see the currency, the exchange. So he just had to fill the bills and to understand what's a 5, what's a 10, what's a 1, what's a 20, what's a 50, what's a $100 bill. He had the ability to learn that, being totally blind the majority of my life. He dammed the streams, a ravine that was going through the yard to my brothers, had to get out there with him and to do all these things. He didn't really have the financial wherewithal to actually do a lot. My mother was the primary breadwinner in our household, and my father was doing all this for it to be a business, but it became more of a hobby, I would say, because it didn't have the return that he put into the business. But another thing, and he kept going with this. So my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he was given the prognosis of terminal cancer. He was given 6 months to a year to live. And I think I was at the age of 10 when I was told that. And he had a conversation with the family, and he said to us, nobody could tell me that. That's between me and my maker. So just understanding where he was as it related to faith. I think, that's half of the battle. Whatever we're going through, we're talking about how to distress, how to decompress, how to actually get through and over certain things that have been put in front of us or have been spoken to us that seem terminal, seem very challenging. We could subscribe to it or not. We could actually exercise activity to match the faith that we have. We're coming up with resiliency plans, which is great. We want to live a long time. So we have to match our faith of living a long time with this plan of action and act on it. So he surpassed his life expectancy by 18 years being resilient. So he had to change his diet. Though we grew up on a farm, we grew up on an animal farm, and I'm actually sharing this article of him that was in one of the local papers. It talks about the 6 acres, but we had 7 acres, and we had game, we had everything, whatever you think of, we basically had it. We had pigs, we had goats, we had Rajah shell ducks, European shell ducks, African, whatever it may have been, swans, geese, guineas, pheasants. That lifestyle was not for me. But outside of that, what we had to do was incorporate some of the growth, some of the green into our farm life to help him in his journey. And it helped us in our journey. And we had to learn how to prepare foods for him and the importance of a raw food diet. And we also had to do a lot of different things and just to help him to make money so we all could sustain. And he taught me how to feed. And that's why the acronym is there, FEED, and it stands for Food Equity and Economic Development. So he taught me those things. And when I came to DC and I saw that food had its place, and it's in multi places, it's multi-solving. So food is not only nutrition, it's medicine. Food is income, food is security, food is freedom and equity, and food, as we know, it fights climate change. So growing up on a farm was my preparation. So when I came to DC, I saw that a lot of people in my community, they had a lot of issues, the same as my father had, whether it was cancer, whether it was gout, other people had diabetes, whatever heart-related issue or whatever disease they may have had. A lot of it was because of their diets. They don't have access and they don't have opportunities as it relates to healthy foods in the community. So that's why I wanted to be a lifeline for the community and help them to create that shift, that trajectory that they needed to have the same outcomes as my father had, been 15 years behind the national average or those west of the Anacostia River is unsettling for me. And I know many a times I felt like an immigrant. I had to migrate and to travel to other parts of the city or to Maryland or Virginia to get the foods that I like, and I incorporate in my diet, the fresh vegetation and fruits and the ashwagandha and the spirulina and the sea moss or whatever it may be. These are the type of things that I sell at the Fresh Food Factory Market, so native and non-native eaters can have access to food that they haven't had for decades. So how do we feed? So a couple of things that I do, my family does, and that you all could do, and I'm pretty sure most of you do. We could grow, we could raise, we could teach. We could grow vegetation and foods, and that helps us to grow our family and ourselves and community. We raise animals, you could raise awareness, and also you could raise your incomes through food. And you have to teach people. You have to, and not only, okay, go do this. You have to show them the how-tos. It's really important that we really look at it as such, that how-to is really important. Composting was definitely talked about, and having solar panels on our homes and etc. There are different things that we incorporate. I not only do this in DC, but where I'm from in Virginia, reactivating some of the land that was used before. Some of it has been overgrown, but really getting that to a place where it once was and being in a better setup than my father had. He was blind, so some of what he put together as far as his cages, some look great, but he will always say, you're vain, you just have to care about the operation, or don't care about the aesthetics too much. So I would say some of it looked like Sanford and Son if you would look at it today, of how things were put together, but they were put together well, and he used the resources and the materials that he had, and that was another way that he was resilient. But we are making it look more aesthetically pleasing, but reviving and redoing some of the things that he put in place at the family farm in Virginia. The top picture is a picture of some of the grow and some of the compost we threw on top of the garden. So we have a mix of things happening now. The bottom picture is of my son and of the goats that we have. In the picture in the middle, we had, visitors over to the farm and just introducing them to the lifestyle. And, they're in the city and they don't really have exposure as such. So really getting them accustomed to goats and chickens and growing, and just incorporating some of that in their city homes. This is a picture in DC. This is a lot that we adopted. So not just working on my family farm or in my backyard, but just working out in the community, like Baltimore City, DC, and a lot of places you will find where people may have, dumped a lot of the things that they call debris and waste, and they've thrown it on the ground and a lot. But I think I want to give my mom an honorary position as an officer, because she definitely want to arrest a lot of people who throw stuff out of their cars and into the streets and on sidewalks. If we're in a car, she sees somebody, oh, they should be arrested, or they should, but just pick that up or pay a fine or something like that. So she's really passionate about putting stuff in their proper place and being good and giving back to the environment. So this is a lot that we adopted and coming through with the raised beds. We work with Casey trees, and some of the trees that you see at the bottom are in place, and some will be coming. So you have the pawpaws, you have the mulberries and the persimmons and different things like that. This is an architect, a landscape architect, who has this property, and by right, they are planning a lot of these things here, and we're matching their efforts with raised beds, and also the relationship that we have with Casey Trees to plant more of these strong towers in our community that not only add shade and life and oxygen, but also are fruit bearing. Another thing that we do is, I have shipping containers, and we were doing farming in a box, pretty much, a controlled grow, and having solar panels on top so it could be off the grid, using hydroponic systems. And the vehicles that you see in the back are older vehicles that we have, and we're looking at how to convert them. So if anybody has done this successfully, are working on it, or knows someone who has, definitely welcome the assistance in doing so. We're looking to convert them to electric, solar, and or using vegetable oils, so they could be oil powered, vegetable oil powered. So this is another way that we could mitigate climate change. At the Fresh Food Factory Market, we are looking at closing the food and wealth gap. We work with community, of course, giving them access, education, foods, healthy local ethnic foods, and also too, we help to boost incomes, because as a smaller mom and pop, whatever retail establishment you have, and even some service related businesses, you're at the mercy of the market, and they have to spend their dollar. But for them to actually spend that, they have to have disposable income. They have to be making income. So it's important that people make livable wages so they could support their families, but also support the businesses in their community. So we do a lot when it comes to workforce development and training people to be employable and actually stay employed, and also to start their own venture. So it's about having the mindset to actually do so, and creating a culture and filling the gap in the industry, and learning and having a business acumen. I've worked for the Small Business Development Center Network for like 8+ years, and I've worked with the Business Improvement District in DC, and I have an MBA, so a lot of this comes in handy when actually sharing the knowledge to aspiring and existing entrepreneurs. And we're an incubator market. We are the first in DC, woman-owned, African-American-owned, resident-owned grocer in DC. We're the first, to have all of that. We're the first in DC to have those. The first health food market in Ward 8, the first to sell local and ethnic foods east of the Anacostia River, to let that be the focus. I think there is another one in Southwest that is in a good proximity to us, but we are the first in Southeast. And also too, we're the only grocer in Anacostia. So when we talk about disaster, if we're talking about resiliency plan, where are the people in my community, where are they gonna go to get food? That's been a challenge. There are few or no farmers markets. They're very lean if we do have them. So that's why I wanted to create the Fresh Fruit Factories Market. There was one full service grocery store in Ward 8 to service the thousands of people who live here. And that's not in walking distance, or a lot of people don't really have vehicles at their disposal. So transportation, public transportation has been a challenge for most folks. So we do deliver, and also through the nonprofit that I started, we pick up food along the food chain from different growers, from different grocery stores. From our grocery store, we do donate and pick up from whomever that has healthy food. Having food is great, but having healthy food is more sustaining, is more rewarding. And we want our community, again, to live. So we want to actually feed them nutritious and immunity building food, and immunity boosting food. So when we're working with our different partners, we make sure that they are growing consciously. And the stores that we are partnering with, we make sure that they are selling food intentionally that will bring a betterment and improve a person's quality of life. So as a lifeline to the community, and opening our market in 2019, we've worked with 32 or more businesses by now, promoting them, increasing their sales. We do a lot of different food tastings and demonstrations, and on a larger scale, especially around the holiday seasons, we like to have a grand tasting. So we're telling people, okay, this is what you need to incorporate. So along the holiday time and that season, families are getting together and they're sharing recipes and cooking for each other, and we don't want to be sharing death with our families, right? So at the end of the day, that's what we could be doing, the foods that are not going to be contributing to their health. So why not taste these healthy food options? Why not taste these ethnic food options that have medicinal properties? So we're actually introducing them to healthy, ethnic, and flavorful food options, but we're actually showing them how to prepare it so they can then have that ordered, or they could learn how to prepare it for their families during the holiday seasons. We had 92 trainings that we've hosted even in the midst of COVID. Our trainings had to go online, which was great for us because we were able to touch more people that way. For residents of Ward 8, had their food manager certification so they could work in any food establishment and manage that operation. And that's another notch on their resume to make them more attractive. We work with different people in the community in offering them workforce exposure, 46 local residents, and we've worked with 28 volunteers since 2019 under the auspices of the nonprofit and the Fresh Fruit Factory. And we do our distribution on a weekly basis, and we've fed over 5,700 individuals in need. And for our efforts, we got a visit on last week from the Secretary of the Department of Labor, Secretary Walsh. He came in, and he descends from Baltimore. I'm sorry, from Boston. So his accent was strong, and my country accent. So, we were battling with our accents, but it went over really well. And he and his team were there to actually talk about the work that we do as it relates to workforce development in the community. So the hope is for a continued relationship. And also on ABC News, we've been a part of that Channel 9 News, Smithsonian, Progressive Grocer, and the like, to talk about how to create change in the community. The last piece here, this is a documentary series entitled Feed Ward 8. We're going to be working with More and also the Humanities Council to do more trainings and more documentaries to really create advocacy and action. Is not just about just telling people what's going on. So we did highlight stories, the disparities, the dreams and desires of residents. We, talked about their tips and different things that people could actually do to make sure that they have better quality of life. A radical change that was real simple that people did recently, which was talked about in our documentary. I don't know if one influenced the other, but community challenged liquor licenses in our community for establishments. They were up for renewal and the community protested. They are, I think, stopping the liquor sales because of clearly no direct contribution to the community. It has depleted the community for a long time and people want something different. Why not have healthy foods in your store? Why not balance that? Why are you bringing more demise in the community? A lot of people felt and feel. And I believe no longer should residents have to leave their communities seeking food nor economic refuge. And with this mantra that I live by and the ability to feed, we're getting supports to purchase and to expand the buildings in DC to have a full service grocery store and Ward 7 as well. And also too, we have a location on North Avenue in Baltimore that we're looking to do the same thing. So the idea is to have multi-locations and definitely work in communities where there needs to be a resiliency plan. It needs to be a market in place. It needs to be someone who's working directly with local growers and who really cares about the health and wealth of the community to really create that change that we need to see and that we all want. And that was once there. A lot of these communities were thriving, different things have happened. We talked about climate change, we talk about other devastation, but drugs and war or whatever it may have been, you name it, there are a lot of things that leads to people's demise as it relates to their health mentally, emotionally, and the lack of foods has definitely been one. I'm gonna drop the links to the documentaries in the chat. But I do want to know if you guys could share in the chat as well stories and different ways that you've used foods in creative ways. So these are some examples to the right, but no matter what you do, definitely share it because I know that we all could learn from different people, from each other. That's what we're here for. We're here to actually share. So everyone share and share alike. And two, if you know anyone who's powered their tools and vehicles using electric or using oil or solar, definitely let me know. I'm definitely interested in that as well. Thank you.
Wow, Amanda, so many people are saying in awe. So feed really is multi-solving. What an incredible story you have to tell us. I've always come from the food as health place too, and I realized a couple of years ago that I was developing arthritis, and that put me right back into that healthy food space. And I think it's really important that we reconnect with food, the heart of culture, the heart of health. Yeah, thank you so much. Do people go ahead and put questions in the chat for everybody, and I'll kind of ask them. I mean, I was going to start with some basics for whoever wants to answer, but I think real fundamental. How do you get started growing food in your place? It might be a patio, it might be a back garden. Who wants to give some thoughts about that?
I like to say you should grow what you like or you would like to try. I grow tomatoes because I like to dehydrate them. I grow herbs because I like to season with them. And if you start with something like lettuce or chives or something on your balcony or in your backyard. It doesn't have to be in the ground. It could be in a grow bag. It could be in an old cooler I used to grow in and drill holes in the bottom of it. You can find materials to make a garden. So really assess where you are, see what you're able to do, and then figure out what you like the most that you want to try first.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Anyone else? Amanda or Mark, thoughts on getting started?
I would definitely say, you know, just where you are and what you have, you know, for instance, you know, just working with bananas. I think my son is going to come in soon. But whether it's a pepper, I try to get things organic as I can, and from local growers, and then, you know, just reseeding, just take the seeds out and then plant the seeds again. You know, you eat it, you trust it, you purchased it, you ingested it. So give it a second life, you know, grow it again, and you know, you keep reaping the benefits. Or walnuts, for instance. I have a plethora of walnut trees in Virginia. So once the walnuts fall, we eat it out, throw the shell in the raised bed, or throw it back on the ground again, so it could replenish the soil, grow again, different things like that. Just small steps you could do. There, just start where you are, start small, start with what you eat, and also to just see what's around you in your local community. And you could just start a barter system with folks that way once you do start growing, and to share the grow.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. And I saw Annabelle posted in the chat that she started swapping Korean dishes with one of her neighbors. And that's something that the more I've tuned into food, I've noticed people around me, like that's exactly what's happening. People are gifting you little things, you know, and you're gifting little things back, and seed swapping, and it you know, starts slowly, but surely. Mark, I wanted to ask you a bit more about your solar panels. Okay,
Yes.
so what can you charge or operate with your panels? What do they do for you? What's their capacity? That's not a very technical question. I haven't got the right language.
We have 100-watt solar panels, which is relatively small scale. They're portable and they fold up. There's they're hinged together and they fold and lock together like a portable suitcase. And once we have our battery charged, we also have an electrical inverter, and we can charge small appliances. We can run lights. If we are camping at a campground that does not provide electricity, we can keep our cell phones charged. We can keep a laptop plugged in. If people like to hike outdoors and have GPS units, you can keep a GPS charged. And so those are more recreational. And if there were an event where we needed to take shelter in our camper, one thing that's important is that in order to have enough solar power to charge the battery that you have, really the first starting point is to define what your energy needs are, and then acquire a battery and solar capability to meet your needs, instead of going out and buying or acquiring things, bartering, trading, and then making the determination that you didn't build big enough because you have more power requirement than you accounted for.
Right.
One thing I will say, I wanted to mention in my presentation and thought it may be better here because we could spend time talking about it if someone was interested. But in California, where they've had awful power problems over the last couple of years because of fire, earthquakes, and drought and other events, some of the local power utilities have developed home-based solar systems where they've developed pre-negotiated rates, and their utility customers can acquire portable solar and batteries, because this way in California, if they have major outages like they've had, they've realized that the true nature of resilience is the small scale home-based system, rather than trying to restart the energy grid so that everyone either has power or doesn't have power. And this way neighbors can become more sufficient in times of emergency, and those with medical devices that require the need for electricity or the need to charge batteries can be more resilient and more self-sufficient at home rather than relying on outside sources. And I think this is being done in Alameda County, East Bay area, and also Vermont Power has done it. Vermont, of course, is a largely rural state, and it has its own resilience needs because of that. And so here are 3 states that are trying to take resilience and put it in the home rather than with industry or your energy supplier.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That's a great example. Someone was asking about, principles of resilience, but the idea of flexibility and modularity. So the more decentralized you have some of these systems, the more resilient you can be, because you're not relying on the whole grid system to kind of come back on. And interesting to hear about these kind of the smaller solar panel outfits, because one thing I did want to touch on is that there are plenty of strategies that might make sense to us as individuals, which can also become maladaptive or problematic at a scale. So I'll give the example that I lived in Tanzania in East Africa for a very long time, and power was out a lot of the time. It was just normal. And one thing is you learn to live, right? You figure it out. But for wealthier people living in the bigger cities, they could buy a diesel generator, and suddenly you've got all of this air pollution and all of this noise pollution 24 hours a day because the main grid's not working, and certain people can solve that problem and others just live with it, right? So that's not necessarily a great solution, but as you said, this kind of smaller solar access for people is really important. Yeah, thanks.
And they're trying to make it affordable too, so that regardless of your socioeconomic status, people would still be able to afford these systems, and it wouldn't be exclusive only to those who can afford it by paying cash out of their pocket.
I just want to add to that, great systems that I know of, Empowering the Containers Outback is a good one. And also too, Costco's has Lion solar kits. That's a portable solar kit like the one you're speaking to. They have them in Costco's now. I even actually bought an extra one. So like if I'm going about and I don't have power, I could actually access that. So Lion, they have actually, in doing a comparison of putting a solar kit together versus buying one, I think that they've made it extremely affordable, and you guys can look them up. I don't work for either. I wish I was getting paid from Lion and Costco's, but that's where I got mine recently.
I just wanted to add also, I know in Baltimore City, they had a program where they were creating resiliency hubs, and the city Office of Sustainability was working with mostly faith-based institutions where there are solar panels on the roofs, there are chargers, there's water, especially for people that when the power goes out, if they have health needs or they have medications that they need to refrigerate, these hubs inside the community are places of refuge and places to provide water, power, and some other needs. And those are just faith-based institutions. I think we can also think about being creative. Dorcas said you were thinking about getting battery storage for your solar so you can help your neighbors. And so I think resilience is thinking about, my neighbor has sleep apnea and he needs the CPAP machine, and I have a generator, so when the power goes out, I can help my neighbor. And I think we can all be creative in how we address some of those ideas.
No, that's great. And to be connected. I mean, how many people know their neighbors well enough to know that? That's another piece of this, right? To be able to know that people know what you have to offer. And that's why I like things like the Buy Nothing group, because that way you can say, hey, shout out, I'm looking for this. And people will go, hey, I can help you. Great. I mean, Amanda, I wanted to get back to the community gardening piece, actually. I recently got involved with a young organizer who started a community garden in an easement kind of close to me. And I'm just awed by the amount of work that they had to do to clear this wasteland. And my offer was to bring in some native plants because I could see where water would start running down when it rained. And that's one thing I can do is split plants and put them in. But, you know, it's an immense project, and that's just one. And the vision obviously is like to do many of these, right, all over the place. So I think the question here is, you know, what strategies work best to engage people in growing food in the community? I mean, what are some of the things that you've learned about that, about getting people out there to grow food together?
I think, you know, sometimes it could be a feat, but it's great to work with children at a younger age, because they're more flexible in their thinking and open to receive instruction. And also too, if people could actually taste some of what they'll be growing, so they may not have a general basic or initial interest in certain things, but once they taste it and feel it and just understand that this will be the yield, this would be the outcome, they're more susceptible to it. And also too, just having income attached to it. And, you know, I hate that COVID has happened, but people understand that food is not, or food access is not a problem, it's pandemic. That need, and I don't really like fear, but, you know, just working with the situation we're in and the climate we're in, people understand now that they need access. They need to have access. So that definitely helps to get people more involved. Making it about them, making sure that you're part of the community, that you really care and they could see and feel that. And I think that connectivity and that communal spirit comes across a great deal. So I think that that has been, you know, a way that we've been received into like different lots and different communities and different people. Hey, I'm just like you, I'm from the community. This is my story. This is who I am. This is my passion. I'm not going anywhere. And they see that, they feel that. And I think, you know, that's the initial. And then just working with the current situation that they're in and just really being a fabric, a part of what the project is, and just them understanding, you know, that it may be a feat, it may be an arduous process, it may take a while for it to come into maturity, but just being there with them every step along the way. I don't ever want to overpromise anything, but always produce at my greatest ability, but just being there with them. And I think that's the main things that actually has helped is just people knowing my voice, seeing me, being active in the community, knowing where my heart is, and also knowing where my resources are. You know, I've invested in your life as well. So I think that really helps to get people engaged. So
Yeah,
I hope that kind of answers your question.
Well, I mean, inspiring role models, but I think it is, you've got to be, I mean, this young organizer who's working on this community garden, one of the people he's connected with is a local chef and they're going to start doing, you know, food demonstrations. So, yeah.
Other resources, the colleges and universities. So Catholic University has definitely been a great strategic partner, as well as Virginia State University. DC, we're not a state yet. So different people could come play in the District of Columbia as it relates to not being bound, or the boundary. DC is territory. So universities of Virginia and Maryland could come do some of their works here as far as working with their extension programs. So we've worked with the university that has helped getting larger names, and getting government involved in what you're doing has helped as well. So there are definitely the power of different resources, names bigger than yours, people with pockets deeper than yours, that helps the community plan comes into fruition as well. So we definitely had to rely on DC government for grant opportunities, and universities for their intellectual property and their ability to get grants and funds to actually help projects as well.
Well, I mean, that's a good connection to another question that has come up, which is, you know, I mean, it's a two-part question, really. So part of it is like, where do you think things are going to get harder and people are going to be more vulnerable as climate change gets worse, you know, in the next 5-10 years? So what do you think are the things that we need to be more aware of that's going to be challenging? And then what do you think we should be doing more of around, you know, our elected officials, for example, and other important leaders in the community, in terms of promoting resilience? So that's for all of you, if you have thoughts about that.
I think for me, it's just letting them know the wins. We voted for you as our elected official. We definitely want you to represent us and make sure that that represents our well-being. Just to be relentless in making sure that they know who you are and your voice is heard in a productive way. Always come in that fashion. But I think, you know, as we're preparing for what will happen, it all depends on the voice that you're listening to. And I think if we're in different parts of the country or different walks of life, whatever our belief is strongly from somebody else's opinion or propaganda or whatever it may be. So there are a lot of different forces, a lot of different things that would impact change, whether it's climate or, you know, if we're looking at the economy and the climate and economy, and just working on the Open.io Rockefeller Foundation vision for 2050. They were just looking at, you know, the wealth gaps, looking at the access gaps, looking, you know, where in the nation will you be and who would have access. So a lot of that could introduce different thoughts in your mind. So I don't see, or I can't say right now what each person should do other than plan, take everything into consideration and let Spirit lead you, let Holy Spirit lead you to where to go and what to do. Because I don't believe in living in fear. I do believe in living in preparation, though. But I do think, you know, it's always good to hear different opinions, but then that's when you have to go into your private space and become in tune with the Spirit.
Yeah, and I want to follow up on that. And sometimes speaking out to elected officials is hard to do as an individual, but if you can find a group that aligns with your way of thinking, you know, I'm here in Maryland, whether it's the League of Conservation Voters or the Sierra Club or, you know, the Climate Action Network, find an organization that is speaking out on an issue or a set of issues that you think are important, and then become part of something bigger, because we can amplify our voices together. I know for Pearlstone, which is one of my clients, that we speak out and we do advocacy education once a year in a formal way, and then we do it throughout the year. And so we try to gather people that, again, that support environmental issues from a faith-based perspective. And that's a way to speak out institutionally as well as individually. I mean, on the federal level, there's also so much happening now that we have a different administration. So there's plenty of opportunity to align and speak out, call your elected officials. I think people on this call are from all over, not just our area, not just the Mid-Atlantic. And so again, reach out to an organization or an elected official or somebody you know and figure out what their path is. But I think here in Maryland, our issues around climate change, really around sea level rise on the Eastern Shore, are imminent. And so people taking preparations for how they're going to deal with short-term events as well as long-term events. You know, Mark at the beginning talked a little bit about climate refugees. That's real. That's happening. Look at Louisiana. And so we have to be prepared as individuals and as neighborhoods and as communities to take flight if something happens. So I really think it's taking an inventory, a self-inventory of yourself, of your family, of your unit, and of your people, and see how you can collectively come up with a plan.
Thanks. Mark, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I think Joan summed it up well. Just anecdotally, we recently took a trip to the Maryland Eastern Shore.
Mm,
When people think of the Maryland Eastern Shore, they often think of the ocean side, and we actually spent time on the bay side, where sea level rise is impacting industry and people's homes. And I know there are people who either may not believe or may believe it's not as bad as some say it is. But the answer lies right in front of us in the tidal waters of coastal Maryland on the bay, where some islands are becoming no longer inhabitable, and others are losing their way of life who once earned a living in the coastal waters.
yeah. No, thank you for that. And I mean, I like that idea of taking a self-inventory. And I think the other piece for that for me is also taking responsibility for playing your part. I mean, I was raised in a family that came out of World War II. My grandparents in the UK, World War II, Victory Gardens. I mean, there was, so much was about taking responsibility for yourself and having your resources and your community resources, kind of strengthening those. So, and I was a Girl Scout, so be prepared. I mean, what else can I say?
Thank
But
you for mentioning Victory Gardens,
yeah.
Dorcas. When I see the bounty that comes from our own garden, I often think of the Victory Gardens from Britain during World War II. And I also recall there used to be a gardening program on television all about Victory Gardens and food that people grew on their small plots of land.
Yeah. No, thank you. We're beginning to run out of time, but this conversation is, I mean, it's just been really tremendous. And, it's so inspiring to have all of you come and share your experience. And the more I connect with people and the more I hear about the different individuals and groups who are doing fantastic stuff around me, I'm just totally inspired. So one thing I want to say to people is there are a lot of people out there who are doing really creative and connected things. So, do look around, just kind of poke around a little bit, and you will find there are many organizations working now at the local level on the climate crisis, challenging local jurisdictions, maybe their city or their county, around developing climate and resilience plans. I live in Montgomery County, and I'm part of a big network of a coalition of organizations that have been doing that with our county. A number of the co-sponsors for this webinar are involved in that process too. So I really encourage people, just kind of look around you a little bit and see what's happening in your local jurisdiction. And certainly in future events, we're going to be talking about things like the resilience hubs that Joan talked about in Baltimore. We'll have speakers speaking to that as well. So I'm just going to say thank you so much for your inspiration and bringing your people power to this. I know everybody's found it really fascinating, and there's been a lot of great conversation in the chat. I can see people sharing resources. So thank you all. I'm going to hand over to Louise, our fearless leader and organizer, to talk a little bit about some next steps. But thank you, Amanda, Mark, and Joan, and thank you to everybody who's helped support the webinar today. Thanks.
Thank you, Dorcas.
Thanks, Dorcas. I'm going to share my screen for a few slides here. There we go. Whoops. So I just want to talk with you about next steps we're going to be DIY Green YouTube channel. We're going to share a survey with you. I invite you to participate in our newsletter. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and access to a group that we're going to be launching on a new platform called Hilo. Which,
I think we may have lost Louise of her connection, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think so. I mean, as Louise said, everybody will receive an email with some follow-up actions that you can take to join the discussion offline, and encouraging you to join us for the next 2 events that we have planned in June and July, and we will keep you posted on future events. Yeah, Annabelle, did you want to say something just to wrap up? I think Annabelle needs to be unmuted.
Hi. Yeah, Louise, can you talk? I guess you wanted to say something about the next webinar.
yeah, can people hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, so I don't know if you can see my screen, but thank you, Annabelle. So we have 2 webinars coming up. One in June, it's June 22nd, and it's the topic is listening to our community leaders, building equity, justice, and climate resilience together. We have wonderful speakers. We have Grace Rivera Oven, who's been helping the Latino community in Montgomery County in under-resourced communities. She's been helping them since the COVID lockdown last year. She's going to talk about how she's been supporting the community and becoming more resilient in lots of ways to pandemics and climate change, et cetera. And then Roxanne Prettyman and Inez Robb are 2 women that run the Baltimore's first resilience hub at First Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Baltimore City in the Sandtown neighborhood. And again, another under-resourced community. So we're going to be hearing from them on how to build community resilience as well as addressing equity and justice issues. And Dorcas will be moderating again. And then July 20th from 7 to 8:30, which is also on a Tuesday, we'll have 2 speakers speaking on nature and the power of nature to build resilience to climate change. Rev Deli, of Designer of Resilience, she lived in Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina, and since then she's been educating and engaging African-American youth in becoming more resilient to climate change. And Adam Sachs from Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, he will be talking about ecosystem restoration that's going on around the world, and that's actually really restoring the soil and the environments for people, providing all kinds of important basic resources that we need, such as clean water, clean air, healthy soil. And Dorcas will be moderating with us again. And we still have the opportunity to contribute to the speakers' projects. We're going to hold the donation opportunity open until next Tuesday, June 1st. The speakers' projects include Amanda, who's at the Fresh Food Factory. She's raising money to launch their farm, or their urban farm, and restructure their kitchen. And then Joan has a project with the Baltimore Tree Trust in partnership with her business called Sustainable Solutions and with MedStar Harbor Hospital, and they're launching an urban forest in Cherry Hill. So if you still like to make a donation, that opportunity is still available for another week. Okay, and that's everything. I want to thank you so much for joining us. It was wonderful to have all of you stay engaged all this time, and we really appreciate it. Stay tuned. We'll be sharing with you more of these, the information on more of these events coming up. Dorcas?
Yeah, something I wanted to add, this is Annabelle, to add to that is, if you have ideas for webinars or videos or any kind of media content, or even retreat ideas, please get in touch with us and share them, because we're trying to really create a community and a movement around this. So, and I'm going to put my email in the chat if you want to email me directly, but we're welcoming your ideas. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mark and Joan and Amanda.
Thank you.
Thank
Definitely.
Thank you, Amanda.
Oh,
See
thank
you all
you,
next
guys.
time.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Louise. Bye, everyone.